This podcast is entertainment, not financial, tax, or legal advice. Views expressed represent statements of the speaker in their individual capacity, do not represent the views of Unchained, and should not be considered investment advice. Speakers often have personal, family, or business connections to Unchained, which may include direct financial benefits. Please see our disclosure at unchained.com/podcast.
We are living through a pivotal moment. Lawmakers are drafting the rules that will define what financial freedom means in the digital age, legislation that could shape the rights of Americans for generations to come. The Last Free Americans examines this moment through the lens of Bitcoin self-custody, the intersection of law, technology, and human sovereignty. This series explores the precedents and pressures shaping this new frontier. Here's our conversation. I really hope you enjoy it.
I think that the narratives about self-custody are varied. And I think it's important to reinforce or speak to other examples or metaphors for why it's important. And yeah, I think in the climate too, where there's bills in Washington that are coming out about protecting the right to self-custody for Americans kind of thing. I think it's just timely to talk with some people that are in industry and experts in their own right about this subject. And so I'd love to have maybe you speak to a little bit of kind of your background and journey. I've watched some of your talks already, and so have some familiarity. But I think especially those moments or places where Bitcoin gave you something you didn't have or didn't have otherwise. Would be awesome.
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this conversation. I'm originally from Russia. I'm an activist from Russia, and I live and work in exile. It's been already 8 years that I work with the Anti-Corruption Foundation. It's a leading opposition organization in Russia. This foundation was created by the leader of Russian opposition, Alexei Navalny, the man that was killed in a Russian prison a year and a half ago. And I joined the ACF in 2017. And I worked in Moscow as a financial manager of the foundation for 2 years during the presidential campaign when Alexei Navalny decided to run for president of Russia. And after 2 years of work in Moscow, I faced personal targeted political persecution, and I had to leave the country. And I left Russia in 2019, and since then I work in exile, but I continue managing finances of the organization. And since we have to work under surveillance of the Russian regime, and our finances are exposed to the Russian regime, all of our financial transactions, the Russian government, of course, immediately realized that it's the easiest tool, the easiest way to control our organization by controlling our money. They were constantly freezing our bank accounts, seizing our assets, and already in 2016, it became clear to our team that we have to have something like a plan B. We have to keep our money in a safe way, and we started using Bitcoin in our work back then. And it was always a lifesaver for us when our bank accounts were frozen or when our money were arrested. We could just use our Bitcoin savings, and actually we prefer to convert our fiat savings into Bitcoin to keep it in a safe place, because it happened multiple times that, for example, I have to send salaries to our employees, and we had more than 300 employees all across the country. And I was supposed to pay salaries, and I open our online bank account, and I see that our bank account is frozen, and I have no access to our money at all. And I don't have money to pay salaries. And people need to have money, to feed their children, to pay their rent and do regular stuff. And it's the easiest way for any oppressive regime to shut down your movement if they deprive you of access to your money. And this was quite challenging operating inside Russia, and it is still challenging for us even after our foundation was labeled as an extremist organization in 2021, and we had to escape Russia. Like the entire foundation had to move from Russia to Europe, where we continue our work now. We still rely on donations. We are a non-profit organization, and since they labeled us as an extremist, a terrorist organization, it is very dangerous to support us financially. Anyone who donates to us from Russia, any Russian citizen who supports us, will face up to 8 years of imprisonment. So, of course, for us, it is crucial to find a way to safely collect donations from our supporters. So we rely on Bitcoin still, even working in exile, even when we're located in a safe place. We still use it a lot in our work, and around a quarter of our budget circulates in Bitcoin. Some people receive salaries in Bitcoin in our organization. So I personally have a lot of experience navigating money of the organization under surveillance of an oppressive government. And since I have this very unique experience, I decided to join the Human Rights Foundation, the financial freedom team of HRF, where I educate activists. I teach them how they can adopt this technology, how they can use Bitcoin in order to continue operating, to keep fighting against their oppressive governments. And activists, not only those who work on the ground, also those who are in exile, who are based in safe countries in the US or in Europe, they still need the way to send or receive money from their countries in a safe way. So more and more activists, they adopt Bitcoin and they just simply don't know how to do it. So I provide webinars for them. It's a very simple educational program where I teach the very basics, how to receive Bitcoin safely, how to store it safely, how to exchange it into local currencies. And that's why self-custody is very important for people like us, because if there's any third party interfering in our transactions, if there's any surveillance, if this information about our transactions leak to oppressive regimes, we will be in a great danger. And as I mentioned, our donors face up to 8 years of imprisonment. And of course, self-custody is crucial when we talk about this donations from Russian donors. And since I moved to the US half a year ago, I see that here there is very different understanding of self-custody, and mostly people do not understand why it exists and why someone like me needs self-custody, just because here people are not exposed to this kind of problems. And I have to really put some effort into explaining why self-custody is important and why I do advocacy for self-custodial tools. And when I explain my situation, when I explain the danger, people understand it, but it takes some time and effort to convince Americans.
Makes sense. I feel like that history, it does so well a good job talking about the role, or in like a in an enablement capacity. And I can imagine especially in your role then in managing the flows and the payments, that's where you got a lot of that kind of frontline operational experience in terms of initializing wallets, best practices for the people you're paying or the people that are helping administer funds, and further extra concerns about privacy at the edges of maybe via conversions to or from fiat to the Bitcoin, or as you mentioned, just lack of any surveilling intermediary. I'm curious if, and maybe it's in your webinars or how you talk to it, like what does a deeper level of some of those playbooks or best practices look like? You could be as specific as, here are the top 3 wallets we tend to use, or just, somewhere in the middle, because I don't want to pierce for too much information, just somewhere, even just kind of unpack a little further in terms of between your organization or a new organization incoming that you're helping get up to speed. They're in a country with an oppressive regime, and that they have support coming in maybe globally or inside the country. What is just some of the first couple steps for that playbook look like?
Well, let me just describe you the program of our webinars. And it actually took us a year to design a perfect program. It's a very unique type of education. There are not too many Bitcoin educators. And I, as an activist myself, since I have a hands-on experience, I know what exactly we need in our work.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky to provide those webinars together with a world top expert in Bitcoin education. His name is Ben BTC Sessions. Maybe you've heard of this. guy. He's amazing educator, but he has very deep technical knowledge of Bitcoin, but he never had experience teaching activists. And as for me, I don't have technical knowledge of Bitcoin, but I have a experience as an activist operating with this currency. So together we have this perfect balance in educating. And we began these webinars a year ago, and it was a 5 days webinar, 1 hour per day. And we could see that people joined the first day, let's say 30 people joined the first day, and on the second day there is 15 people, on the third day there is 10 people, and we see that less and less people show up for the next sessions. And we try to analyze what we're doing wrong, why people do not show up anymore, and eventually we tailored our program, we tailored our content to the specific needs of our audience, and we found a perfect solution. We realized that our content was too complicated, the language, the content itself, we put too much information on their plate, and we decided that people don't actually need to immediately learn about federations or some like platforms or coinjoin technology. Like, it was too much. And I was thinking, when I started using Bitcoin myself, I felt so intimidated and overwhelmed. There was so much information, and I didn't know if I actually need this technology, this very information, or it's an extra layer that I don't actually need. So it took me quite a long time to understand what I actually need. So we eventually tailored the program to 3 days webinar, 1.5 hours per day, and we keep it as simple as possible. On the first day, we teach types of custody, and we talk about real world use cases, like my cases of other activists. We explain why Bitcoin is a great tool for people like us. We try to convince them why they actually should use it and why they can benefit in their work from this technology. And we teach very simple stuff, how to download their first self-custodial wallet. We send sats to everyone in the group. And on the second day, we talk about how to actually exchange Bitcoin on the ground, because it's the most common question our students ask us, like, okay, I have my first Bitcoin, but what am I going to do with that? And of course, the perfect answer is like, try to keep it as it is, try not to exchange it, use Bitcoin as a currency. But of course, I cannot be that delusional. Many people, especially in some rural areas, they would prefer to exchange it into local currency. Or let's say those big charities, Western organizations who want to support activists who work on the ground in dangerous areas, they want to send them a Bitcoin grant. And those activists on the ground, of course, they need to exchange it into local currency. So we talk on the second day, we talk about types of exchange platforms, why it is dangerous to use custodial platforms, and the difference between non-custodial P2P types of exchange. We even talk about Bitcoin ATM machines or Bitcoin meetups, where to find one or how to start your own meetup. So we talk about different options. And on the last day, we covered the topic of Bitcoin crowdfunding, because all of those people, our target audience, is activists and nonprofit organizations, so they depend on crowdfunding. So we teach them how to implement crowdfunding tools like BTCPay Server, how to collect donations safely in Bitcoin, and how to do it in a self-custodial manner, because there are different ways to collect Bitcoin donations. There are companies who provide those widgets to your websites, but we believe that self-custody is very important, so it's better to operate with your Bitcoin by yourself. So we teach how to use BTCPay Server, and in the remaining time, we also show them cold storage, how cold wallets look like, how they can use it. And each session also includes a lot of Q&A. We answer all the questions on the way, and people have a lot of space to talk, to ask questions, to give comments, to share their personal experience. So it is a very short webinar, but we try to cover all the most important basic skills. And after that, we provide personal assistance for those who want to dive deeper. So we stay with them in touch, and we try to assist on the way, because my goal is not just to give them information and then just to let them go. I really want them to start using the technology. So I keep assisting our students, and I really want them to start using Bitcoin in their work. And when there is a success story, I'm really happy about it. So our last webinar, we had 130 students on the first day, and on the last day till the very end, 118 students stayed till the very end. And for me, it was a big success, which means that it is simple, and no one was scared. And after the webinar, we also send a feedback form. So we receive some comments and feedback from our students. And from that, I can see where we still have some weak points, what we should improve. So for now, I think we found the perfect balance in our content.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, you were able to refine it, or like you really looked at the data and like worked to make it a better product. I was curious, on that first day when you do a little bit of the hands-on, setting up wallets, sending them sats, what wallets do you recommend, or what do people use?
It's a very good question, and it's one of our struggles, because, of course, for the purpose of this webinar, when you send sats to like 100 people, 130 people, and we should do it really fast. And what we want to achieve is a wow effect, that they receive it immediately. You know, we want to show how fast it is, how easy, and how cheap it is. And of course, for this, we need Lightning technology. And otherwise, it will be slower, or it will be more expensive. It depends on the fees on that day, and we cannot risk that much. And we send only $2 of Bitcoin to everyone. So if today the fee is also $2, so it's kind of too expensive. And we were looking for the best solution for the best Lightning wallet for this purpose. And unfortunately, right now in the market, there are not too many perfect solutions. I mean, there are many Lightning wallets, many that I personally use, that I like, but we need a wallet that is very simple, that you download and you can immediately start using without any prep steps, because we are very limited in time, and our session is just 1 hour, and like we don't have too much time for that. And for now, we use Muun wallet for the webinar, and it's my favorite wallet. I personally use it for my day-to-day transactions, and for this webinar to send Bitcoin through the Lightning Network. It's the easiest way, because some other wallets, they require additional steps, like you should top up your wallet like $80 to open a Lightning channel, and we cannot afford that. Or some other wallets, they are just their interface is not as simple. It's overloaded with extra information, and I know myself that if this is going to be the first tool I'm going to show my students, they will just not show up for the next session. And it must look very simple, very clean, and easy to use. So for now, I would say Muun wallet is the best for this webinar purpose, but I don't limit my students only to this wallet. I just explain to them that we use it for the convenience of this webinar, but there is a big list of self-custodial wallets, and you can choose whatever you want. And after each session, I also send a PDF file that contains extra material, extra information, additional wallets, and they can just choose whatever they want to use in the future.
Makes sense. And yeah, amazing. You end up, in someone's first day, go all the way to like Lightning, which is interesting, and yet parts of the experience, you'd say, leave something to be desired. Because when they're missionalizing the Muun wallet, can they go straight to having like an address, or do they also are there some like back up your seed words kinds of steps that they walk through, and then they're like putting an address in the chat of the webinar, or they're somehow giving you an address that then you all have to operationally copy paste 130 addresses for payment?
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't look very smooth. There is no At least we haven't created a beautiful solution for that. So yeah, for now it looks like our students copy paste their Lightning addresses, send it to the group chat, and there are hundreds of addresses. And I work together with my co-educators with BTC sessions, and also Wayne, my colleague from HRF. He joins our webinars to support, to assist me with that. So while I copy paste the addresses from the chat, I send them to Win. He sends sats, and meanwhile, while we're doing that, Ben is answering some questions of our students. So we have this, but we already did it many times, and it works really fast and smooth. But yeah, before doing that, of course, we also have to explain Lightning technology, what it is, how it works, and why it's important for smaller transactions, for faster transactions. And we generally want people to start adopting Lightning technology, so we promote it. Yeah, and it doesn't actually take too long. I think everyone understands it. Also, because of our style of our education, I found this. I'm a teacher. Before, many years ago, I was working at the primary school, and I know how to teach little kids the way they understand. So I kind of use some of the tricks from my past, and our program is designed like that. I am kind of interviewing Ben as if I never used Bitcoin in my life, and I ask him very stupid, very simple questions. Like, for example, Ben, I want to buy Bitcoin, but it is very expensive. It is $100,000. I cannot afford it. How can I buy it? And Ben explains, actually, Bitcoin is divisible, and you can buy any part of Bitcoin, even the smallest one. And I keep asking him questions as if I'm interviewing him, and it creates a very friendly atmosphere. People like who join our webinars, they never used Bitcoin in their life before, and they feel intimidated. They think it's a very difficult technology. But when they hear me asking very simple questions, exactly those questions that they have, they feel more relaxed. They feel like we're going to explain everything in a very simple way.
Yeah. They already have those questions themselves, and you're helpfully surfacing them for them, giving them courage to ask their own when they're ready. And then when you talk about the kind of igniting more communities with Bitcoin in their respective countries, and you mentioned things like pointing them towards maybe starting Bitcoin meetups and stuff. Yeah, just how I know it's very broad, but how well served is it all, or like how you sequentially for that kind of stuff to take on? There's a lot of this, the practical ideas of somebody's sent $50 of Bitcoin for something, or grant, or just it was a donation or something, and now they're in one of these countries where there's not an exchange, or if there's an exchange, it requires KYC also. So like there's all kinds of risks to that financial privacy again. So how does it look to kind of bootstrap that type of a thing, or how have you seen that succeed?
Yeah, unfortunately, this last mile problem is the hardest thing to address. And in our webinars, we have people from all around the globe, from 50 countries, and all of them, they have this question like, okay, how do I exchange it? How do I off-ramp in my country? In some countries like Afghanistan, there is like no way at all, only cash in person, and meetups and different regulations everywhere. In some countries, like in European countries, regulations are very strict, and it all depends. And all of our students ask us these questions, and we don't have a general answer for everyone, and we just try to explain general rules like types of custody, risks of custodial tools, risks when you provide your personal information, and then unfortunately we cannot give everyone the platform or like a meetup link or whatever. It's up to them to make their own research. But since they have some general understanding how this works, what the risks are, they can at least identify some risky ways and just to avoid them. But yeah, and also we avoid any legal advice. I have no right to give any legal advice like, hey, you can use this platform or you can use it this way, because first of all, regulations in every country are different.
Yeah.
And I may not know something, and maybe regulations just have changed and I'm not aware of it. And also it's a very dangerous path for me. Let's say in Nicaragua, Bitcoin is completely illegal. And if I have students from Nicaragua and I give them advice, what exactly to do, how to exchange, and then they get arrested for operating with Bitcoin because they followed my advice, I have no right to do that. So I just explained the technology itself. I explained the general rules, and then everyone has to make their own research or consult with local advisors, lawyers, and find their own way. I share my personal experience, the experience of the Anti-Corruption Foundation, what kind of platforms I personally use, and how I personally, for example, send Bitcoin to my family in Russia. I can explain how I do that, and they can just use my experience.
Do you use Lightning for that, or on chain?
When I send money to my family, I honestly rarely use Lightning at all in my personal life. I use Lightning mostly to probably pay at some, let's say at the Bitcoin park here in Russia. Yeah, I can pay with Lightning for some snacks or drinks there, and it's amazing. And at some other places where Bitcoin is accepted as a payment, of course, I pay with Lightning. But generally, I think I never had experience of like very high fees or something like that. So I use on-chain transactions, and I use P2P to send money to my family. So basically, I do not send Bitcoin directly to, let's say, my mom. I go to a P2P platform where I find a trader willing to exchange into Russian rubles. I send him my Bitcoin, and he sends Russian rubles to my mom's whatever bank account or cash in person, whatever. Yeah, but this is the only way now for Russians to send money to Russia. It's not only for me because I'm under surveillance. Since Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, Russia is now under financial sanctions, and the entire country is being completely cut off from the global financial system. And you cannot physically send money to Russia from abroad because the SWIFT system in Russia doesn't work anymore. You cannot use international banking to send money to Russia. It's like physically not possible. The country is completely isolated. And even if I wasn't in exile, an activist, I didn't have a way to, I don't have a way to send money to my family. And thousands and millions of Russians are facing the same struggle right now. Since the war started, Putin began recruiting men to go to the war. So many Russian men decided to escape the country because they didn't want to go and fight. And now a million of Russians living abroad are facing this exactly same problem. They cannot send money to Russia to support their families, or they can't receive money from Russia, or they still have jobs in Russia and they work remotely, but they cannot receive their salaries. So I can say that this is a weird paradox, but it's true. Oppressive regimes, they are unintentionally fueling Bitcoin adoption. And I can see that clearly, that more and more activists reach out to me and ask me like for education.
Yeah.
And not even my
you've definitely, I mean, not as evidence through the webinar being successful too, but like you've seen this trend really developing over the last year or several years.
Yes, absolutely. I can see the trend is developing, and more activists understand the impact, the value of this tool, and they turn to Bitcoin. And I see like the amount of activists reaching out to us. The program is becoming more and more I would say people get more and more aware of our programs. So if we had first webinar, we had like 30 students, then we had 130. And we didn't even put much effort into promoting it. People just find us and they sign up. Or one activist joined and then invited all of his activist network to join the next webinar. So it's growing. Yeah, and I see that the trend is this trend is increasing, and also the trend of oppressive governments arresting bank accounts is exists. And one dictator started doing it and gave this example to another dictator. This, for example, happened right now in Georgia, the country neighboring Russia. Georgian government recently implemented a law, foreign agent law, which allows the government to block bank accounts of any activists, nonprofits who receive funding from Western countries. So they just control those activists, those democratic movements, and they try to shut them down with the help of the banking system. And they took this example from Russia, from what Putin was doing to us. So yes, this unfortunately, this trend is increasing.
Yeah. And I'm curious from an organization's perspective, at the ACF, what, because then this starts to be next up, this probably isn't in your first webinars, but you might maybe mention it even like Multisig and kind of like now how to protect foundations resources.
Yeah.
Have you gone down that path or had to go down that path?
Actually, we still talk about Multisig, and actually at the last webinar I invited my friend from Unchained to speak. So Mike Greenaway, he spoke at my.
Oh, really?
Yes, I invited him as a guest speaker just to talk a bit about Multisig, about Unchained, and this technology. Because of course, some organizations, especially bigger organizations, they are scared just to have one Bitcoin wallet with one key and give this key to their accountant or financial director or whatever. It's quite risky just to keep if you operate with bigger money, it's quite risky. So yeah, we also talk about multi-signature solutions, and we talk about different companies providing the solutions. And I actually want to highlight that nonprofit organizations, they really need it, not only like businesses, but also nonprofits.
Yeah.
They need the solutions. But one of the main problems is that those multi-signature solutions, they exist in the US, and here due to your local regulations, you would not onboard people with some certain passports. And for example, if I have a Russian passport and I just cannot be a customer of some of those companies, and that is very unfortunate. So I wish that there were more options for people who suffer from authoritarian regimes, but they cannot use American tools just because of their passports. But I totally understand that it's all related to local regulations.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are, and then BTC Sessions would know many of them too, but like these open source multi-sig coordinators, Sparrow, and we published one on Unchained too, that's called Caravan. That's an in-browser version. I guess, just at a high level too, how important, or how would you rank, like having been an activist now for at least, it sounds like 10 years or more, in terms of equipment or like necessary tools? Like how does self-custody and Bitcoin rank in terms of like, survival, like, food, water, sleep, shelter for humankind? But for your kind of organization and the tools it needs to like operate, how do you rank like self-custody and getting to take advantage of that property of Bitcoin and its functioning?
Well, if using custodial tools will result in you being arrested and spend 10 years or 8 years in prison, then I would say that it's like a top level priority because everything else wouldn't matter if you get arrested for making a donation and being caught. And this actually happened. It was on the news like less than a week ago that someone was arrested in Russia for donation to the Anti-Corruption Foundation and sentenced to, as far as I remember, 5 years of imprisonment. So, of course, self-custody for people like us and any other privacy tools is number one priority because, of course, the financial system is number one tool of surveillance for the Russian government, not only Russian government, for any oppressive regime. And not only the tools inside Russia are surveilled, not only the banking system inside Russian government or any other government can actually request for this information from custodial platforms. They can request, they can say that, oh, we started a criminal case against this person, he's a suspect, and now we want all financial information about his transactions on your platform. So they can request, and this information can easily be provided to the government. And even if you use this platform and it's based, I don't know, in the US or registered somewhere else in Asian countries or whatever, if they have to comply with this, regulations, if they have to provide this information, they will provide it. So there are these risks of using custodial tools generally for people like us. And if you realize that you're a target of an oppressive regime, self-custody must be your number one priority for sure. And not only storing your Bitcoin, but also like exchanging through self-custodial way or collecting donations in a self-custodial way. And also, of course, we understand that Bitcoin is not completely anonymous. Like there are ways to de-anonymize transactions, especially someone. I will give you a practical example. At the Anti-Corruption Foundation, we receive Bitcoin donations from our Russian supporters, but we cannot guarantee that our Russian supporters do not use platforms like Binance or something else, custodial platforms. We don't know where they buy Bitcoin and how they operate with it. And we don't know if their transactions are at risk, if they are linked to their identities. So on our side, we are responsible to do everything we can to anonymize those incoming transactions. So we actually use tools like coinjoin to provide extra layer of protection for our donors. And unfortunately, these kind of tools, they are not very famous. Not many organizations even aware of existence of those tools. And we at the Anti-Corruption Foundation, we were not aware of those till I met href Alex Gladstein and many brilliant Bitcoiners who explained it to me. And we didn't even hear about existence of those tools. And of course, as soon as we learned that we could actually provide more protection, we started using coinjoin in our work. And this is funny. This is something that I have to also explain here in the US, because these kind of tools, especially those coinjoin tools, they have very bad narratives that they're widely used by criminals, money launderers, and so on. And I have to explain that as also maybe it's used by bad actors, but we cannot survive without those tools. And I do a lot of advocacy for privacy tools as well. So privacy tools, self-custody, very important things in our work.
What sort of taking the view that, in your home country or in Russia, if you long-term 20 years, whatever it is, that there's a new regime, there's no longer this oppressive push or no longer the crisis that necessitates the kind of advocacy you do, or even in maybe countries like the US, where we talked about that don't have some of the day-to-day realities that force people into self-custody. Because what role then does self-custody have, or how would you be thinking about it in peacetime, kinds of situations, and what is it still important?
As for me, with my Eastern European mindset, I am sure I would be promoting self-custody in any scenario. And generally, I think that money is your private property, and you should have a right to use it without interference of the government. And initially, money was invented as a P2P transaction. It was never meant to be controlled by the governments. Initially, it was just exchange between two people. It was different. It was before money. It was something else. It was different goods, and people didn't. Government didn't interfere in that. And I think that it's not only about governments controlling money to protect you, like in the US, as they say they do, to prevent money laundering or terrorism, or like in Russia, they surveil it to punish you. But also, of course, they use the surveillance because they sell this information about you to many big companies. When you purchase something, this information about your purchases is used to advertise something to you, so you buy something else, and it's a huge market. And I don't like this idea that someone is manipulating with this information that I provide. And we do financial transactions every single day, so everything you buy, everything you use, these purchases, these transactions, they contain so much information about you. And I generally don't like this idea that someone else knows so much about me. And it feels to me a bit uncomfortable. So I would prefer to have an opportunity to use money in a self-custodial manner anyway. And even operating with the regular money, with fiat, I prefer using cash. So not because I'm trying to hide something. No, I don't like this surveillance. I don't like when banks just freeze your transactions and force you explaining like why you're sending money, where money coming from. And I have different types of experience. I lived in Russia, I lived in Europe, now I live here in the US, and I see different levels of this triggers. If in Russia there is a certain level that banks are not gonna ask you questions, so here the level is way lower, and I mean the threshold is way lower, and they like ask you about everything you do, and you always have to explain that you are not guilty, and you have to prove you're not guilty doing some simple transactions. And it's kind of stressful, and I don't like this system. So I think that I'm not alone in this. I'm sure that many people think this way. So I don't think that when Russia is a peaceful democratic country, people will stop using self-custodial tools. Not at all. And even here in the US, I know people who prefer to use self-custodial tools, even if they are not politically engaged. Still, they just think the way. Yeah,
they feel it's important. This is really great. I know to really schedule half an hour, so we're a little over that.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You got it, Anna. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.